Hey, it's Jesse here, and I want to talk about the Batman 2 and the villains I want to see in the Batman 2. This is mostly going to be a discussion about what I want for the villains, or what kind of villains I want in the sequel, and the kind of villains I don't want to see in the sequel, or just don't want to see again because we've had past iterations of them in the past. So I want to talk about the first movie. Just going to talk about the first movie very briefly. It's my second favorite Batman movie. I love what they did with the Riddler, and I love what they did with the Penguin. The fact that the Penguin's getting his own spin-off series just tells you how great his performance was, and I'm so excited for that series, which I'm probably going to make a video about it because I am a huge Batman fan. So anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a huge Batman fan. I've been a Batman fan since I was a little kid. And I'm a Batman fan till this day. So I've seen every single Batman movie in existence, and the Matt Reeves Batman is my second favorite Batman movie of all time, followed by The Dark Knight, and Christian Bale and Robert Pattinson are my favorite Batmans, followed by I do like Ben Affleck's version of Batman because he's, of all the Batmans, he is the most comic book accurate portrayal of Batman. And I just think that maybe if he was in a better movie, people would like him a little bit more. But he was not a bad Batman. Like, Ben Affleck was a good Batman. He is not in the trash bin of history of Batmans. That honor goes to George Clooney. I don't care what anyone says, but George Clooney is the worst Batman by far. And not too close behind Val Kilmer, but Val Kilmer has some redeeming qualities. Oh, Michael Keaton. I like Michael Keaton too. He was good for the type of movie that he was in with Tim Burton. But yeah, it's my second favorite movie after The Dark Knight, and from the actors, everything about that movie was just great, and to see the detective side of Batman is the best thing about that movie, and I hope they would continue that in the next movie. I wanted to keep it within that detective realm because that vibe is, we never got to see that in any other Batman movie up until that point. So we always got to see the more action side of Batman and the more comic booky side of Batman, but we never got to see the detective side of Batman. So I really appreciate that they did that for the first time in this movie. From the opening scene to like everything, the atmosphere of the movie and the detective noir style of it is what I really enjoyed about the Batman. And the villains, what they did with the Riddler and the Penguin. Like I said, I'm really excited for the Penguin series. The Riddler, like what they did with the Riddler was so good. I really enjoyed the Riddler. The Riddler really, it's kind of what like I envisioned the Riddler to be in a more modern, realistic version of Gotham. I felt like if Christopher Nolan had a chance to do the Riddler, he probably would have done him in the same vein or similar to what Matt Reeves did. So I'm really happy with the Batman, the movie overall. I know I'm like going on and on gushing over the Batman, but it's a good movie. And the only criticism I would say about the first movie or the Batman movie is it's a little bit too long. I could have shaved it could have been a little bit shorter, but that's a minor nitpick of that movie. I think everything else is spot on, beautiful, love it. All right. Now we're going to get into the meat of the actual conversation I'm having, which is what villains I want to see and what villains I don't want to see. And that's mostly where we're going to be discussing. So the number one villain I want to see is the Court of Owls. And the Court of Owls is interesting because there's not one specific character that falls under the Court of Owls. It's more of a group of people or individuals. Think of it as a group like the Illuminati, like secret underground, like cults. I guess you would call it like an ancient cult that's been around for a very long time and been pulling the strings behind the scenes of Gotham and all that stuff. So I would love to see the Court of Owls. I think the Court of Owls fits perfectly within the Batman universe that Matt Reeves have created, and the seeds of the Court of Owls I think are there in the movie, and I really think it would be a great thing to explore the Court of Owls and how it ties to the history of Gotham and the Wayne family, because the Wayne family does have some ties to the Court of Owls, and it would be really great to see how Batman is somehow tied to that. And visually, I think it would be very creepy and atmospheric, and hopefully they will capture the creepy aesthetic of the Court of Owls, because that's what was great about them in the comic books, is how creepy the whole vibe of the Court of Owls was, and kind of scary. So if they could make the Court of Owls a scary group of shadow individuals that we don't know who's in charge, who's doing what, and who is part of that cult, it would be really interesting to see that in a movie. And I think we're going to see that. I think they've been hinting at Court of Owls, and I just think Court of Owls is also newer to the Batman canon. And a lot of mainstream audiences probably don't know anything about the Court of Owls, so it'll be something new and interesting for people who are casually into Batman. Obviously, us hardcore knows everything about the Court of Owls. But it would be interesting to see something that's not been done before in a Batman movie with villains that are not familiar to us. I mean, they could make they can make maybe the leader of the Court of Owls somebody, or make up a new villain within the Court of Owls. That would be very interesting, having a villain who's the mastermind of the Court of Owls that they can just make up for the movie. And there will be an original villain, sort of, an original villain for the movie. The number 2 character that I want to see in, or villain I want to see in the Batman is Hush. Now, Hush has been in animated and in comic books. And he's a very interesting character because he has connections to Bruce Wayne's family, and it was a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, Thomas Elliot. And that would be very interesting to explore the duality between Batman and Hush, where Batman, through his trauma of his parents being murdered, used his grief and trauma for good. We could see the opposite with Hush, where his trauma and his problems with his own families made him go the opposite direction. And that would be very interesting to see in a movie. And I also think that his character could fit very perfectly within the Court of Owls also. I feel like he can be like the puppet or the main antagonist, while the Court of Owls is kind of looming in the shadows, and maybe will be a bigger threat in the third movie if they decide to do a trilogy, and have Hush be like either being manipulated by the Court of Owls or just or being the mastermind of the Court of Owls or part of it due to maybe his family connection or something. I also think visually he'll be very interesting. Now, do I think he's gonna have, which I don't want to give away here right now, but there is like the whole him being a doctor. They can bring that into the mix. Like, I don't know. They could change. I wouldn't mind if they changed the origins of Hush just slightly, because I don't have like that much of an emotional connection with like Hush if they changed him. I don't think he's iconic enough that people would be like so upset that they would change some of his origin story to fit the narrative better for for the Batman 2. But Hush, I think, would be a great addition to the Batman 2. The third one I want to talk about is Scarecrow. I know we had Scarecrow in Batman Begins, and he was played wonderfully by Cillian Murphy. As the Scarecrow, I saw him recently in Oppenheimer. He's just a good actor. Like, he was good in the Dark Knight trilogy, and I do really like what he did in that Dark Knight trilogy. But I think enough time has passed that we could probably have the Scarecrow come back. And I also think it would fit very well within what Matt Reeves has created in the Batman. And I think he would be an obvious choice. And I think a lot of fans wouldn't mind seeing him again. I really want to rank up the scary parts. If they're going to do the Scarecrow, I don't want them to do the same thing they did with the Dark Knight. Just having a dude in a suit with a burlap sack over his head. That worked for the Dark Knight, but if they're going to do the Scarecrow in Batman 2, the Batman 2, he better be scary. Like, nightmare-inducing scary. Like, I think they could do a nightmare-inducing Scarecrow without pushing it into the R-rated territory. And still, I think it'll still be in the PG-13 realm. As long as you don't see blood or any, like, I think they could make a very, very, very scary Scarecrow without making it R-rated. Because I don't think the Batman's going to be R. They'll be leaving money on the table if they made it R. Now, I'm not saying I'm against, like, I know that Deadpool and Wolverine was an R-rated movie and it made like $1 billion. But that was Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, Deadpool is a very popular character. That movie was going to make money regardless of what it was rated. And you have a teaming up with another popular character in Wolverine and Hugh Jackman coming back. So I just don't see them doing an R-rated Batman, at least not in this current iteration. And I don't think it's necessary to make Batman R. I think eventually we will get an R-rated Batman at some point. I mean, we got an R-rated Joker, and there was no other way to do a Joker movie without making it R. I'm sorry. I mean, you could, but it wouldn't be as impactful as the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, which was R. You couldn't do the level of violence that movie had and make it PG-13. And the subject matter is pretty dark and intense for the Joker. But I think Scarecrow, they just have to crank up the scary. The moment you see the character, you're just like, oh my god, this guy is freaky and scary. And the stuff they could do with the hallucinations, with the fear gas, that would be very interesting. And it's realistic enough that it will fit within the Batman too, because Matt Reeves is going to keep things pretty grounded. I don't think they're going to have too many fantastical things Like he said, this is his own word. Like, they're going to go to the edge of the fantastical, but never go full fantastical. Which tells me that they're going to push it as far as they could without making it not believable within the world that they created. Now, let's see what James Gunn does with his version of Batman if they're going to go the complete opposite. I just hope they never go for camp, because that's never been my favorite version of Batman. I do not like campy Batman. But I'm going on a tangent. So, the other villain that I want to see, but I think it's a long shot, is Mr. Freeze. I feel like there's a way to make Mr. Freeze realistically, but I think it will kind of not ruin the character for me, but it will strip what made him interesting. And I don't want them to use Mr. Freeze unless they're really going to use Mr. Freeze. Don't just get a watered down. If you're going to make a watered down version of Mr. Freeze, then don't use Mr. Freeze. That's all I could say. Don't use a watered down version of Mr. Freeze. I want to see Mr. Freeze because the last time we saw Mr. Freeze, it was a really horrible version with Arnold Schwarzenegger and with Batman and Robin. And everyone thinks Mr. Freeze is a joke because of that version. And all Batman fans know that Mr. Freeze is a cool character ever since the animated series back in the 90s. If we could just have a live action version of Mr. Freeze, just like the animated series, with all the pathos and all this emotional baggage that the character has, then it would be... I just don't understand why it hasn't been done yet. He's a very popular character. Mainstream audiences know who Mr. Freeze is. So, do I think he's an A-list villain? No, but it's a long shot. I don't think Mr. Freeze is going to be in it, but if they were to do with it, I would be happy as long as they do not water down what makes Mr. Freeze freeze. Maybe they'll come up with a really ingenious way of incorporating Mr. Freeze and somehow use his powers in a more realistic way. Maybe he has like a power suit and it doesn't really come from him. I don't know. Something. Or he kills people by freezing them. I don't know. He could be a serial killer who just freezes people, but that would be kind of lame. I want to see Mr. Freeze in a refrigerator suit. Or they can make him like the Arkham version, because the Arkham version of Mr. Freeze was really cool. And the boss battle that you have in the Arkham game was so good. It's one of the most memorable things about that game. But Mr. Freeze, I think, is a long shot. I don't really think Mr. Freeze is going to be in it. Now, I have 3 more like long shot characters that I don't think are going to be in it. But there's one in particular I don't think is going to be in it. Like, I really don't think it's going to be in it. Unless they can find a way to make him not so fantastical or so out there. And then 2 that I think could happen. But it's a long shot. And the only reason I think they're a long shot is because movie studios and executives, they are risk adverse. So they always want to put like a recognizable villain in these movies. So for them to like go a deep cut Batman villain, I don't think they would do that. So these 2 that I'm going to mention have a great possibility of being in the movie, but I don't think it will happen. And it's the ventriloquist / Scarface, which is the puppet's name. It's about a guy who has a split personality where his other personality is personified within a ventriloquist dummy. And he does horrendous crimes, and he's been a crime boss despite being a kind of silly character if not done right. But I think if done right, and in a very scary atmosphere, and it would be extremely disturbing and scary to have a dude whose psychosis is within a puppet. I just think it would be a very, maybe not to carry an entire movie, but I think as a side character or as someone that Batman is pursuing as a side something or a henchman, I think it would be great. He's been in, I think the only live action medium he's been in is in the Gotham series. And they did a decent job with that one, I think. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen that series. But I think the Ventriloquist would be a long shot, but also I'm kind of 50-50 with that one. But it's such a deep cut for a Batman villain that I just feel like maybe not so much. But I could be wrong. Maybe they'll be like, oh, the Ventriloquist and Scarface are going to be in the movie, and then I'll be surprised. And I'll be extremely excited because the one thing I want at least one new villain that we have not seen before in a Batman movie. That's all I ask. It's not a big ask. I just want a new villain we haven't seen before. In live action. In a movie. Not in a TV show and not in animated form. In a movie with a proper budget and all that stuff. The other one is Professor Pig. Now, Professor Pig is a more recent addition to the Batman. Well, not recent. He's been around for a couple years. And he has popped up in other mediums. He's been in Gotham, and he's also been in a very short-lived Batman animated series called Beware the Batman, which was a CGI animated show for kids. Now, granted, Professor Pig was extremely sanitized for children audiences because he is a very, very disturbing character. He prides himself as being an artist, and he liked to mutilate people and call them work of art. You know, very serial killer, very gruesome, very bloody, R-rated type of character. So obviously in that kids show, they weren't going to use that. So they had a more sanitized version of him. But the concept was the same. It was this dude with a butcher's outfit and a bow tie, and he wore a realistic pig mask. Well, sometimes it was a realistic pig mask, and sometimes it was a fake pig mask. I think the fake one always scared me more, like made him more creepier in the comics when it was a fake one. And but he would be a great, again, maybe not carry the entire movie because the character doesn't have a huge backstory, or at least that I'm aware of. I haven't read the comics in a while. I am jumping back into them. But I do remember when I was knee deep in comic book reading with and I remember reading comics where Professor Pig was in it, and it was created by Grant Morrison, which his Batman run was trippy to say the least and weird. And I remember him being introduced, I think, in Batman and Robin, and he was introduced during a time where Bruce Wayne wasn't Batman. It was Dick Grayson, which was the former Robin, and Damian Wayne, which is the son of Batman, long story, was the Robin. So it was Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian Wayne as Robin. And that's when I first read about Professor Pig, and they didn't really give him too much of a backstory when they first. So it was very Joker-esque the way they introduced him, because they didn't really give him too much of a backstory. I think they have given him a little bit of a backstory since. I could be wrong. They can correct me in the comments. But I think he hasn't been. I don't think he has enough lore to carry a movie on his own, unless Matt Reeves comes in with a great twist to make him more than just a crazy serial killer. And the other one that I think is a huge long shot is Clayface. But I think Clayface can work with an idea that I have in my head. If Clayface was the failed actor, like he's always, there's been multiple Clayfaces over the years, but I always preferred the failed actor version of Clayface. I feel like they could do it as not as the crazy mud monster or clay monster that they portray him in the comics or in animated, but more of a maybe an actor who was famous at some point and he gets disfigured somehow by a car accident or something, so he can't get work anymore, and somehow he's so good at his job of being an actor. And you know how like actors go into method acting and they transform themselves into a different character entirely to become a different person? I feel like maybe if they went with that angle with Clayface, where the guy is so good at changing his voice or changing his appearance that nobody really knows what he looks like, but underneath he has a deformed face. But with makeup and masks, he constantly changes his appearance. And I think that would be... And then the police or the media would just give him... Someone can just blurt out saying like, oh, his face is like made out of clay because his face is like melted. Like his real face looks like it's like melting or something. Or they call him Clayface because he's like a chameleon, or, he's constantly morphing into different things or people. Not things, but people. I think that's the only way it would work, but again, it's a long shot because he doesn't want to do fantastical characters. But that's the only way I could see it fit in and make it more grounded. They would have to take some huge liberties because I don't care how good of an actor you are, to just completely transform yourself into a different person. People don't notice that you're... I mean, it could work. It just depends on the actor who plays, and it could work if they did it that way. But again, Clayface is not super popular with mainstream people, I don't think. So I don't see them going in that direction. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is, before I finish the video, is the villains that I don't want to see. For various reasons. Some because it's played out. We've seen them too often. Mostly that's the reason why I don't want to see some of these, because I think we've seen these characters way too often. And I'm going to say Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, I do not want to see in a movie. I do not want to see his origin story again. Because every time they introduce Harvey Dent, they always introduce him before he was Two-Face. And then they do the whole origin story of him becoming Two-Face and blah, 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 blah. We've had 2 live-action iterations. Well, actually, 3 live-action iterations, 2 movies, 1 TV show. And Tommy Lee Jones played him, and it was an awful version of Two-Face because they made Two-Face comedic. And Two-Face is not a comedic character. I don't care what anyone says. He's not a comedic character. And we've had him in the Dark Knight trilogy, which was an amazing version of... God, I cannot remember the actor who played him. Wow, I cannot remember the actor. Someone in the comments can mention who the actor who played Two-Face, because I cannot remember his name. Wow, I cannot remember his name. Well, they did a good job in The Dark Knight with with that version of Two-Face. And the way they did his face, and yes, it was a very brief introduction and story arc for him in there, so we didn't get to, it was a good for the context of that movie, and I liked it. I liked that version of Two-Face. And then you had the one in Gotham, which I don't remember if he fully became Two-Face. I don't think he did. No, I think he stayed as Harvey Dent the entire time. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen that series. But the thing is that... And then we have the animated versions, too. We had my favorite one, which was Batman the Animated Series, had a version of him. And then we had some animated movies where he was in it, like The Long Halloween. Great animated movie. Love that movie. Those DC animated movies are sometimes better than the live action stuff. Some of them, not all of them, but most of the Batman ones are good. Watch Batman Under the Red Hood. Amazing Batman animated movie. Great. But yeah, Two-Face. I just don't want to see it again. Like, and we just saw him in Batman the Caped Crusader, which is the most recent Batman animated series that's on Prime. And I liked what they did there. They gave him a very short story arc. They kind of did it. What they did to him in the new series, it's kind of what they did to him in The Dark Knight, which is like a story arc where he was like, a good person for a while. Though they kind of made, in the Caped Crusader, they kind of made him a jerk from the get-go. But his heart was in a good place, I guess, or something like that. I don't know. They didn't make him very likable before he became Two-Face. But yeah, again, Two-Face again. Like, don't do it. Don't do it, Matt Reeves. We've seen that story 100 times. Do not do Two-Face. The other one, which is going to be controversial for some people, but maybe not. I think Batman fans might agree with me. Let's not do the Joker again. I know we're going to get the Joker. They already cast the Joker. We already know who plays the Joker. I just don't want a movie revolving around the Joker again. Not for a while. Only because we've had Joker multiple times already. Let's go down the list of all the Jokers we've had. We're going to start... if you want to go all the way back to, like, the Adam West days. Cesar Romero, I think is the actor's name. I'm not a huge fan of the Adam West era of Batman. So I'm not too familiar with that era of Batman. I know, I call myself a Batman fan, and I barely seen any of the Adam West stuff, but whatever. It is what it is. I just don't like campy Batman. It's not my thing. So I know they have that version of the Joker, and then we got Jack Nicholson's Joker, which I love, for a Tim Burton movie, for that era, with Michael Keaton. It just fit perfectly. That Joker fit perfectly within that world. I love that version of the Joker. He's a classic version of the Joker. I like it. And then we had Heath Ledger's Joker, which was... Even before Heath Ledger's Joker, then we had the animated version, which was Mark Hamill, which anytime I read anything Joker related, that's the voice I hear in my head, is his Joker is always the Joker that it's in my head when I read his character in a comic book. And then we had Heath Ledger, which is freaking the best, still the best. And then we had Jared Leto, which is the worst Joker. It must suck to be the only actor to play the Joker and be just completely not good at it. And I don't know if it was the editing or the movie's fault and they didn't let him like do what he wanted to do, or we didn't have enough footage of him doing what he wanted to do. Because I think his Joker had potential, but we just didn't have enough of it. And the look was kind of weird, but it hasn't aged well either. Now when I see that movie, it's kind of cringy for me. Like, oh man, this could have been so much better. So much potential. But enough tangent about how I don't care for the Suicide Squad. Or was it the 2016 one? Yeah. No, I like the James Gunn one. But, and then after Jared Leto, they had one weird version that wasn't really the Joker, but was the Joker in the Gotham. That was weird. And then we finally got Joaquin Phoenix, which was excellent, but a very realistic version of Joker. That was like the most realistic version of Joker we've ever had. Like if Joker existed in the real world, and he might have been that way, you know? Because unfortunately we live in a world where there is real life Jokers out there. But we just had too many Jokers over the years, and now we have a new one potentially. It's just the character needs a long break. Batman has other characters that are not just Joker. And then the last one where I'm just going to talk briefly is Bane. I don't want to see Bane either. I think we've had our fill of... I think The Dark Knight Rises was an okay movie. It's like the weakest in the trilogy of The Dark Knight. I like the Dark Knight trilogy. I like The Dark Knight Rises. But if I had to say which of these movies are the weakest, I would say The Dark Knight Rises. I still enjoy that movie, but after repeat viewings, it doesn't hold up as well as the other two. I think Batman Begins holds up, and The Dark Knight hold up still, but Dark Knight Rises is a little bit wonky. Oh, my cat just decided to come in and make noise. And that's my cue to end this. I hope you enjoyed me discussing Batman. I do this for fun, and I hope you enjoyed what I had to talk about and my love for the Batman and DC Comics. I'll be talking more about DC Comics, and also, just thanks for listening. Bye.